Good afternoon to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. Take a look at this, will you? Wow, Tropical Depression Alberto, fully tropical, spinning over Indiana, low-level circulation, not very much in the way of deep convection, but very, very, very well organized. The low-level vorticity, nice and round. That's what one should look like. But not over Indiana and coming out of Illinois. I mean, really? That is truly amazing, and it's nice to have weathernerds.org provide the floater. That's fantastic of you guys. Thank you. So there it is, spinning around, heavy rain over the Appalachians, sorry. And that caused a lot of problems. I talked about that over the course of the weekend, that I felt like the biggest threat was going to be to your elevated areas, into Alabama, up into the Appalachians, especially the southern portion. And we saw what happened in Ellicott City. That was indirectly related to the overall large plume of moisture coming up out of the Caribbean. But folks over here in Marion and up towards Bakersville, Spruce Pine, the Catawba River, the Tow River down into Asheville as well. The Tow River's not in Asheville, kind of segueing, talking about Asheville. Flooding, and life-threatening situations with the Tahoma Dam. If you follow Brad Panovich out of Charlotte, he's talking about this a lot. And it just goes to show, folks, that we talked about rain being the biggest problem, and it was. And you don't know exactly where it's going to be, but when you see this kind of a setup and the transport of all this tropical moisture into an area that has mountains, that's what's going to happen. And it did happen. And luckily, Alberto stayed subtropical in its structure, and that's more of a definition of the wind field and how everything is distributed and its core structure, so forth. The impacts, some economic loss on the Florida Panhandle and elsewhere because of this thing's presence down there, not wanted, especially Memorial Day weekend, but overall damage light for the most part. Some areas, you're going to have your isolated areas where there are big problems. The unfortunate loss of life of the two folks with the media in North Carolina covering the effects of this storm. You probably saw that. And the tree falling on their news van or their SUV or whatever it was. You just never know with these systems. And that's why we have to make sure we don't downplay and say, oh, it's just a storm or a depression. It doesn't matter. It's harmless. This weekend proved that. All right? That's all I'm going to say. Rainfall potential, not too bad, luckily. Again, the main focus of any of this moisture that's still being advected in, the southern Appalachians here, big problem. And then anywhere that you get these training storms, you could have some more flooding because the ground is very saturated. Lots of rainfall across this region for the month of May. Wilmington, North Carolina, my hometown, setting a record. Obliterated the old record. We're well ahead of it. So I think we're in the top 16 of all time rainfall. 14 inches or something like that total. Here's the National Watch Warning Map. Again, flash flood watches and in some case warnings for the Appalachians right down the spine. Any hikers, campers, youth groups, church groups, anybody out there in groups, especially where you have youngsters or oldsters, scattered around, please, I beg of you, stay in contact with everybody. Stay away from those streams and creeks. Don't play in them, and try to get some viral video going of something happening. It can rise quickly and wash you away, and you lost your life. I'm serious about this. We saw what happened in Ellicott City. Unfortunately, a loss of life. One person confirmed so far. Hopefully that's it. But you've got to take this rainfall seriously. I'm tired of people that think that the rainfall is not an issue. It's killing people and it's causing property damage, and we have to treat it as one of the major impacts of tropical cyclones. And we just do. All right, we'll talk about that down the road. It irks me because we can prevent this in terms of the loss of life part. Usually. The freak accident, unfortunately, for the two people in the new, I can't remember the station, my apologies. That's just one of those random things where you just shake your head. They're doing their job. They're out there covering the storm event. But the flooding issues, you have to be sensible. That's what it comes down to. So let me get off my soapbox and back to what's happening. Look at that amazing structure. Fairly heavy rainfall on the northwest side, but nothing torrential. We don't have any flood issues in this region just yet, so that's good news. If we scroll around, though, you look down, still all on the east side of this system is this massive transport of deep tropical moisture coming in out of the Gulf of Mexico, and in some cases even tapped into the Caribbean still. So you're going to have these lines. You look here coming up towards Atlanta, some of these areas down here in southern Alabama, even near Pensacola, Florida. You know, these are where you're going to get your heavier downpours. And the peninsula itself, look at that, just socked in. Lots of heavy rain, all part of this overall pattern of this massive transport of tropical, deep moisture, high precipitable water values. It's, you know, it's weird. It's just raining all the time, it seems, and that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So we got to focus on it more. All right, so some interesting things here. Alberto, you know, really got its act together over here, moved up, and then kind of did not exactly this, but, you know, something like that, right? And so look, this is today's or yesterday's map, but you remember in previous discussions we talked about this little area. It was never warm enough to begin with, 24, 25 Celsius, and Alberto came in and churned it up even more, so you got this little dot in here of 23 Celsius, I think it is. So had Alberto come up the loop current, like the Euro was showing for a while, and then come over here up into the Mississippi Sound, maybe it would have been tropical earlier, maybe out here somewhere, and then come in perhaps as a Cat 1 hurricane. That wouldn't surprise me. It still had a lot of dry air to deal with, and you got to mix that out if you're a tropical cyclone trying to upgrade yourself. You can play what if all you want, but it definitely stayed closer to this colder region of the Gulf, and that kept it from strengthening too much. But once it got inland up here, as you saw, its structure improved because it moved into a better upper air environment overall, and so it reached its potential over land. It strengthened and organized itself, sort of upgrading itself to that potential over land. You're not going to get a hurricane forming over land for obvious reasons, but it structurally changed and it became fully tropical, and it did so over land because the atmosphere supported that. That's generally why that happened. You know, even over the elevated areas of Alabama and farther north. Pretty remarkable. So that's the Gulf. This is the Atlantic, West Atlantic sea surface temperatures. Just thought I would point this out. 26 Celsius now, getting all the way up here in the Gulf Stream. Your beach water temperatures in the upper 70s, mid to upper 70s, so it's getting there. Memorial Day was kind of a bummer for a lot of people in the southeast, you know, this area. Not everybody, but a good deal. So maybe the next shot, July 4th, I think that's going to be pretty good, and we'll talk about why later on. Wider shot of Atlantic sea surface temperatures, everything in this area, 26 Celsius or higher, you know, all the way out into the tropical Atlantic. So all of this talk about the cold Atlantic, well, let's take a look. How cold is it really? This is the actual sea surface temperatures from the National Hurricane Center site. This is your 26 Celsius line, which is about 79.5 Fahrenheit, and it goes down, you know, about 10 degrees latitude in the far east Atlantic, but it's May 30th. You know, let's see this, what it looks like on August 1st or August 30th. The Atlantic out here is going to warm to 26°C or higher in plenty of time. Yes, it's colder than it should be, especially over here, and we can see that here on the Reynolds methodology of sea surface temperature anomalies, departures from normal, giant area, relatively speaking, right? It's a pretty big area of colder than normal. But as I said the other day, it's not like this water temperature is, you know, 65 degrees and over here it's 85 or something like that. That's terrible writing, but the Atlantic's going to be warm enough. These are just showing us the departures from normal. And then you go in and you look at the tropical waves. Oh, well, they're still there, you know. And so if these are, I can't pick them out exactly, but these impulses of energy will move out into the Atlantic. And if they don't develop out in this region, where are they going to develop? They're probably going to develop further to the west, farther to the west. When you're talking distance, I believe you use far. So, and if they don't develop in the Atlantic Basin, they can develop in the Eastern Pacific. And people live on the Mexican coast and the Pacific side in Central America too. So it's not just a U.S. thing, all right? I am not United States centric when it comes to hurricanes. This will be a problem for somebody. We may not have the intensity that we saw last year in the deep tropics out here for you guys, but what if we do? What if it's just one that comes through here and even at a lower latitude and finds a rich environment in a very small area? It does not take being named right here and coming all the way across and doing something like that to have a bad season. And I think that some of this talk on social media about how cold the Atlantic is may be luring people into thinking that we're not going to have a hurricane season at all. But I want to balance that out and say that if those conditions are hostile through this region enough so, you're going to have very little activity coming out of the deep tropics anyway. And it's just, we'll see. I'm not saying it's going to be busier than people are saying. When you try to go to one extreme or the other, you got to kind of go back to the middle and understand what it all means in context. Yes, it's colder than normal, but we're not talking about it's not going to be warm enough to support hurricanes at all. And it's only May 30th. Again, let's see what it looks like on August 30th. All right? So there's that big shot of the African continent out into the tropical Atlantic. We really don't worry about this area just yet. But again, look at that. Lots of organized convection over the continent now, intertropical convergence zone. We'll get more active over time, and we'll start watching that closer. All right, speaking of watching, it's day one coming up on the 1st of June, Friday, and I'm going to go live on YouTube in the office, and we'll just kind of talk. I mentioned this while I was streaming live during Alberto. It'll be kind of informal. I don't want to say it's going to be fun, but I don't want to be, numbers and doom and gloom and we're all going to be hit by hurricanes. We know it's hurricane season. What can we do about it collectively? How can we learn? I'm going to field questions that people have sent already, and I encourage you to post questions in the comments that you want me to address now. Email me, hit me up on Twitter. Hey, Mark, would you talk about this? You can ask about my career, what's the strongest, what's the weirdest. We're going to have a lighthearted, kind of fun, friendly get-together. I can't invite you all into a conference center, which is not feasible. I mean, I would if I could. Trust me, it'd be amazing. So let's do it virtually, all right? And I'm not just going to preach down to you. I want to have interaction from you all. We'll do the YouTube chat, and we're going to, of course, involve our HurricaneTrack Insider members. It's all going to be up and running, and we're going to get together because in the weather world, it is, I know it sounds silly, we're one big family. And I want everybody to be safe and informed and not scared unnecessarily. All right, if you understand what you're up against. Remember G.I. Joe? That knowing is half the battle. And that is so true. So join me Friday evening, 7:30 Eastern Time, plus or minus a few minutes. And it ends when it ends, whenever I'm done. And you never know, maybe one of the kids will pop in and interrupt me, and we'll just deal with it and have a good time. That's what it's all about. I'm not some know-it-all that's going to preach down to you and just leave it at that. That's nonsense. And there are some people that do that. I think we're all in it together. I've met some of you in person. I'm going to meet more of you in person over the coming years. It's an amazing world we live in, isn't it? So join me if you can. And if you can't watch it live, I will archive it, of course, and you can watch it at another time. Alrighty? So real quick before I go, this has been very successful. And it's not about lining my pockets. It's about keeping me in the game and allowing me to expand eventually. I want to add staff. This is an amazing thing. The guys that came up with Patreon, that's a great idea. It's kind of like a subscription, but it's more of supporting what matters to you. So the folks that have signed up recently, thank you very, very much. $1 all the way to the folks that have put in $100. It all adds up, and it's going to create change in what we are able to do. So I'll talk about this more on Friday. I'm I'm going to have some amazing things that I'm going to also bring up, some surprises, a couple of giveaways. But yeah, the Patreon thing, fantastic. So if you're not a subscriber on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like the videos, hit the notification bell so you make sure you get notified when I put something out. Follow on Twitter. I got a list for you. It's kind of assignment oriented, isn't it? I'm sorry. But yeah, you got to follow along so you get updates in the future. I'm done. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching as always. I'll be back with a much shorter version of this tomorrow.